Hello there, everybody. Right, well observed. I'm not actually Adam Wilborn. He's off getting married like some kind of weirdo, so I'm presenting all of his podcasts during all of his work for the entire rest of the week. Hi, guys. How are we feeling?
Hello, friend.
Great, yeah. What does he normally? He's got a big spiel at the start of these, doesn't he? Like, if you like this kind of thing, you can subscribe to.
Yeah. Well, first of all, your delivery on the hello was all off.
Oh, what does he normally do?
Hello!
Hello!
I'm Adam Wilborn from WhatCulture.com, and this is how I speak.
Yeah, all right, swap seats then.
Cool, let's go.
Why don't you take the class, Andy? Yes, I'm joined here today by Andy H. Murray. The H stands for how do you think of something to go in there every single time you do a
I'll
video?
do that again for you.
And Michael Hamflett. The H stands for Hamflett. And we are here today to talk about the latent ripple effect of yesterday's shock news in wrestling. Last week's shock news in wrestling, that Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman had been appointed executive directors of Raw and SmackDown, respectively. And what this is going to do for WWE's on-screen televised product. Obviously, very exciting news. As you said yourself, they don't let this thing get out unless they want to create some kind of buzz. And we're expecting TV ratings to go up this week as a result. And we are anticipating, come October, a new brand war.
Well, that's what they want us to anticipate, definitely. The draft has been slightly butchered by the wildcard in recent weeks.
Slightly.
Slightly butchered.
I sense that they would argue that because ratings have taken a minor upswing and we're dealing like minuscule percentages when the ratings do go up, that the wildcard has been a success. The likes of getting Roman Reigns across both brands, having champions pretty much appear anywhere so that you can tease that Brock Lesnar might appear anywhere. There are these little ripple effects of the wildcard effect seemingly working, but I think as a viewer, you just feel confused, you just feel a bit exhausted, you're running out of patience with seeing talent twice in a week, and it would be nice to recreate that semblance of a rivalry that they had when they brought this back in 2016.
Michael, you can argue that anything's a success. I've got my annual review immediately after this, right? So trust me, you can argue anything's been successful. What we're going to do before we get started, because we are going to talk about whether or not they should do another draft immediately, given how much it's kind of just all over the place at the moment. I'm going to play a little game. I'm going to mention some names. Now, bear in mind, the draft was only just after WrestleMania. It is our recent history in an industry we work in every single day. So there should be no wrong answers, right? Because it's been so clearly booked since. I'm going to give you a name, and I want you to tell me where they were drafted in the draft.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Oh, goodness.
Aleister Black.
Aleister Black.
It's got to be SmackDown, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Drafted to Raw.
What?
Drafted to Raw.
There's not been any mention of that door on Raw.
post-
Raw's door.
The Singh brothers.
They're on 205,
I was just thinking...
but they weren't drafted there. They were sent to SmackDown with Jindy.
Drafted to Raw. Split up.
Sorry, sent to
Split
Raw.
up?
They were split up, and then immediately after they split them up and put them on Raw, they then drafted them to 205 Live.
Cool.
Andrade and Zelina Vega.
They went to Raw and then back to
Raw.
SmackDown.
There
Raw.
he goes. Lars Sullivan.
SmackDown?
SmackDown, yeah.
Nope,
Yeah.
drafted into an own personal hell of his own making. So, would you like to see them redo the draft immediately? Given that, in fact, a better question: this wild card rule does it
gotta
render
go.
the draft?
Yes, it does.
Pointless.
It renders it completely pointless because you're still seeing the same faces from Raw and SmackDown appear on both shows. For me, the thing has been a complete catastrophe from start to finish. Any ratings bump has been 1% or something like that. The shows are still down something like 20% on last year. It's still a catastrophe. The crisis is going nowhere. This has had no real meaningful impact. It has had a few cursory ones here and there, as Michael pointed out earlier. But no, the wild card, there's no point in having a brand extension if you're having 7 or 8 different wrestlers cross over from different shows every single week. To me, it's black and white, and there's not even any debate on it.
There was a pretty damning segment a few weeks ago where Seth Rollins called out somebody that had come over on a wild card. I can't even remember who it was, but he was saying to them, it's not like SmackDown, we've got red ropes and Tom Phillips isn't on commentary. And that was it.
Yes.
That was what the writers had, to sort of differentiate between the shows. And that wasn't what this last brand extension was about. It wasn't. There was an earnest attempt, certainly in 2016, to have separate writing teams, a separate vision for the show. The Universal Champion and the WWE Champion felt different. You could receive them both as main events rather than just having an A show and a B show. It brought SmackDown back to life, to be honest.
Yeah.
SmackDown was a dead brand for years, and we're creeping towards that at the time when WWE needs it least. It theoretically has to dress up as the A show in time for October.
Yeah.
And they've worked backwards towards that destination.
I mean, just to sort of give you the context on, I think people forget precisely how dead SmackDown was up until the last brand split. Our working schedule, well before your time I should add, our working schedule here was 3 of us. used to watch Raw to do all the coverage on Raw the next day, and one person would read up on what happened on SmackDown.
Yeah.
Because it was genuinely, that's all you needed to do. It was just simply like...
It was a recap show.
Just a follow-up of like some stuff that happened on Raw, but maybe they do a tag with the Dudley Boys at the end. Yeah. Pretty much like the long and short of it. And it really did. I mean, they had those new camera angles where they were like moving things around. They put all this underused talent over on SmackDown, and it got over as the better show from an in-ring perspective.
It was kind of like this Isle of Misfit Toys where
Yeah.
none of these pieces seemed to fit together. You had guys like Dean Ambrose and AJ Styles, and nothing
The
on
land of
paper
opportunity,
worked.
wasn't it? That was
Yeah.
the branding.
Like no part of it should have worked, but the writers did a really good job of what they were handed, and they created a show that was really enjoyable and really consistent. All these little oddities just doing their thing.
Almost like if Vince doesn't really want to bother with something and he gives it away to people who actually know what they're doing in this industry, it gets better.
It gets
as a
better,
result.
brother.
I've found the wild card really depressing this year. I'm such a bad wrestling nerd that when a lot of people talk about confusing stipulations, I often think they're overstating it slightly. It's like you've maybe got one or two things to pay attention to. You can do it. The wild card has become too difficult to pay attention to. In the first few weeks on the podcast, we were cynically counting along the episode where Vince introduced it and he changed the stipulation on night 1, and then they lost count in the second week. But you could at least say, oh, they said they were going to do 5 and they've done 6, and that you can't keep count anymore because you can no longer keep in your head who's on which brand, as we sort of showed at the start of this podcast. And that is really damaging to your enjoyment of the show, along with when other things are damaging it in the process. The last thing you want to have to worry about is who should even be on the show. Anything that's taking you out of the match when some of the matches are as dull as they are at the moment is just it's a step too far, I think, to ask of the viewer to keep tabs in such a way.
Yeah.
I like when I first heard the wildcard rule idea. When we started banding the numbers about, it can be this many, this many, this many. I thought, you know what? If they did it in a way whereby either the GM from Raw can give a wild card to a SmackDown superstar, or the GM from SmackDown can give it to them to go over, so they can both sort of interfere with each other's shows. There is basically one wild card to go to an individual or a team every single week, but it can't be doled out by either brand. Then that would make it exciting because you could have people being invited over to compete in matches, and also people interfering as surprises. But we've kept it as, it's a wild card, not the wild cards, right?
Full
Vince
deck.
just shuffling an entire pack of these things. You guys, Roman. Blah, blah, blah. It's just been a total mess. It's never made sense at all. Do you think it's dead? I know we're saying it should be dead, but do you think they will kill it? Because bear in mind, it's October before any of this Heyman Bischoff stuff's really going to start in earnest.
The draft isn't dead, but I think if they were to bring it back now, it would. You've hit the nail on the head there. It was such an artless integration of a potentially workable gimmick, and that's often the problem. Like if you're not loyal to the draft, there's no point for a draft to even exist.
Yes.
And like you've just pointed out, if you come up with a way where there's a storyline reason for a guy to invade a show, let's say, it's actually quite exciting.
Yeah.
But a bit like the Superstar shake-up, we got all excited about the first one of those because we assumed there would be warring general managers saying, I'm going to try and take this talent, or I'm going to try and get in the head and say, come with me, I'm going to give it. And instead, a guy's Titantron just plays and they're on the show now.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it. And that's so effortless. There's just no sort of effort. There's no thought put into the process. And unless you kind of start ground up again with something like a draft, it'll just be another retread of that. It's got to mean something from the beginning. It's got to have foundational reason to be. Otherwise, it doesn't actually have a greater purpose, I don't think.
Andy Murray, just to play devil's advocate here, if they did indeed do another draft, pretty much you'd effectively be putting Bischoff and Heyman as sort of like pitching them on television as the creative minds behind this, as they are, backstage, the general managers, certainly. If you did another draft with sort of the idea being, as he says, a bit of psychology in it, a bit of pomp, a bit of circumstance, does that almost already steer them away from what we're supposed to expect of them as these guiding hands, these Vince figures, and put them as more of like on-screen characters?
Yeah, it does in a way. Like, there was a leaked poster that went out this weekend that had what will Paul Heyman do now that he's in charge of Raw, effectively, on the front, and another one for Bischoff that kind of suggests they're probably quite willing to dilute that anyway. But no, it absolutely does. If these guys are supposed to be solely behind the strings pulling the strings, good sentence there. Yeah, it kind of makes a farce of it if they're on air doing this draft. You could easily do something along the lines of that without those guys there, but you probably would need to have some kind of representative to make the actual picks themselves. It's a difficult situation. I wouldn't be against seeing either of them on TV, to be honest. I think
from time to time, they're great.
Yeah, like Heyman's great, obviously, and Bischoff, everyone criticizes Bischoff for a lot of reasons. WCW, TNA. The guy has always been a fantastic televised performer, is the thing. All that gimmick with the big smile and the great entrance music, of course. He is a tremendous mic worker. He's a great character. I wouldn't be against seeing him on TV. But then you get into the situation again where you have an on-air authority figure, and that is something I would like to see less of.
I'll be furious about that because obviously we are the authority. So
Of course.
if we're actually, they've not mentioned whether or not we're being directly replaced by these two.
It's a
And
change
I
to my
think-
working
I was
conditions.
going to say, I think so far we've done a pretty good job. I think Stomping Ground went down really well. So
Yeah, Baron Corbin's push.
Take
was
5.
going well.
That's enough of the serious stuff. Let's do the fun stuff. If they did a draft this week or next week, who needs to change brands?
Oh.
Oh, who needs to do it?
Nobody.
I don't even.
And that's our podcast.
I don't even care about the impregnation vacation. She's such a star, Ronda Rousey at SmackDown. The narrative has to shift, and whether Vince likes it or not, that has to feel like the A show, even if he can't bring himself to tear himself away from this sprawling mess that is Raw. SmackDown's got to feel that big. I think, personally, I believe one of the reasons Eric Bischoff's been hired in that role is because he's got a really good history as a bit of a snake oil salesman and massive networks.
Yeah.
He gimmicked 2 hours out of TNT for wrestling against Monday Night Raw when everybody assumed it would fail. He convinced everybody in TNA to just give him the wheel and drive it into a wall in 2010 with Hulk Hogan in his passenger seat. Like, this is kind of his MO. Like, and I say that with respect, I should point out, warm respect, because I quite like wrestlers. I quite like the wrestling industry for allowing these guys to have goes at it.
Yeah.
He's going to sit in multi-billion-dollar meetings and try and convince guys why a show isn't actually failing. No, those curtains, those big black curtains, no, it's just part of the set. We like to create ambience with it, you know. It's like, it really sort of like, it brings
Diffuses the sound, doesn't
yeah,
it?
you know, like,
Diffuses the
it's good
sound.
for the acoustics. So I'm all for it, but like, wrestling shows still need stars, and surely in that 1 year she proved herself like a star that nobody could have anticipated within the
Oh,
wrestling
God, yeah,
universe,
definitely.
certainly. And I kind of almost hope that like the impregnation doesn't happen just quite yet, because that starting in October, that would get her to one more WrestleMania, and what a launching pad for SmackDown on Fox.
Oh, 100%.
Besides, you don't need another pregnancy that's going to make you miserable. So.
Yeah. I mean, really, if you're looking at needle movers, there are, 3 left if we're being generous? Rousey, Lesnar, John Cena. John Cena's barely around. Undertaker, maybe, but you can't obviously trust a man of his advanced years.
What needle's that he's moving precisely?
There's a couple of ones I could mention. But no, it's like, if you're talking about brand picks and people who can actually make a difference, it really is. Cena's not going to do anything, let's be honest. It's Rousey and Lesnar. There's not really anyone else. Seth Rollins is popular. Becky Lynch is very popular. Kofi Kingston, very, very popular guys. There is no evidence whatsoever to show that these people are making any difference from a business sense. People tuned in for the title-winning moments at WrestleMania. They have not followed up. The lowest viewed post-Mania Raw in forever. The ratings have continued to crater. It's a mess of a situation. They don't have any stars. So the answer to the question is the only 2 stars they have left, Rousey and Brock.
And where would you put them both?
Smacky D.
Yeah,
Put them
SmackDown.
both on
Yeah.
SmackDown.
Yeah.
I think the last 2 years, the efforts were made in the Superstar Shake-Up to make SmackDown feel bigger.
Yeah.
But Vince can't help himself. The Roman Reigns trade earlier this year.
Well, the wildcard rules are proof of that, isn't it?
Yeah.
He put Reigns, his biggest star in his own head, on SmackDown.
2 weeks.
And then immediately came up with a rule that allowed him to go back on
yeah,
Raw.
Yeah.
Like, they've tried a couple of times, and he just can't help himself. Like, the pull of Raw is too great for him.
Yeah.
So it's going to take like guts and gumption. But money's always the driver.
Yeah.
So this deal, like, if there's a cooling off period, or if Fox get antsy and Bischoff's not like kind of like keeping the door bolted shut, like if then he's actually required to provide the wrestling that he's promised he can, then there will be no choice. Or he's taken out by the XFL and other people that spot that lack of stars try and actually create some. It's more of a foundational ground up thing on SmackDown, which sounds ridiculous, but that's how wrestling always used to work.
Yeah, it's a
You know,
star-driven business.
Yeah.
It always has been and it always will be. Like, I love Roman Reigns, and there's all, like, AJ Styles. Some of my favorite wrestlers are in WWE ever. But they're nowhere near stars on the same level as they should be. And the real solution to all these problems, as always, is learn how to make new stars.
And on that note, can I push you for a final answer? Should they do another draft ASAP?
No.
No.
No, I'm with you. That's a clean sweep across the board there. Anything
Okay.
else?
Yeah,
Any other
100%.
business? I don't know how Wilburn wraps these things up.
I think to conclude, I think a new draft is pretty much pointless with the wildcard rule in play. And really, if you're going to scrap the wildcard rule, let's just push forward with the established rosters we have.
I think they can get away with it come October because enough time's passed since the actual one. It gives them a whole sort of fresh start feeling.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then and only then, for me,
It's a good time of year to do it because WrestleMania becomes the focus around November that nobody really wants to talk about. So
Yeah.
you're at least setting away new programs then, rather than panicking around March that you haven't got a WWE title match.
So there you go. That's your first post-Wilborn podcast. Welcome to the
believe he's
Bantitude era
dead.
for a whole week. As you know, normally these are quite serious. They're quite intellectual, quite cerebral. Really good points are offered across during the regular podcast across the week. It's only when we get to wrestle culture on a Friday that things collapse.
Get a let off
So
steam.
look forward to an entire week of a complete mess of audio output. But thank you for joining us for this one. God knows where it's going to go from here. Let us know what you think of it all in the comments below. Should they do a new draft? Is it the worst idea ever? Shout it all out. All opinions are good opinions, except for bad opinions. Thank you both, Michael Hamflett. Say goodbye, Michael Hamflett.
Goodbye.
And Andy Murray.
Bye-bye.
Where can they get you both on Twitter? That's a real question.
At Michael Hamflett.
You can get me at Andy H. Murray. The H stands for Hamflett.
I like that one. And I'm, of course, Adam Clery at Adam Clery. And get us all at What Culture WWE. That's where we do all of our really, really fun stuff. And yeah, it's a podcast, so if you like this kind of thing, don't forget to subscribe to
iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast.
Wherever you
There you
get
go.
your podcast from. As we do interviews, roundtables, roundup of Raw and SmackDown.
Discussions. There you go.
And a roundup of the week on Wrestle Culture, complete with a bloody good quiz, of course. Yeah, I'm going to learn that. I'm
There
actually
you
going to
go.
learn that for all the other ones. But yes, thanks. That was it. That's the end.
Bye.
This is the end now.
We
See
did
you
our
later.
best.
This is it. Bye. Thanks. Podcasts. There we go.
Gang member.
Be a long
That's all
week.
right.
It'll be a long week this.